You, Mr. Speaker. At this time of year, we all know the age-old saying that it's better to give than to receive. However, Mr. Speaker, this should not have been the approach taken by the Prime Minister when it came to negotiating the deal. In my humble opinion, it appears that we have given so much, yet received so little. The shambles of these Brexit negotiations have gone on for too long. From an indefinite backstop and extended transition period to significant mention of, to an insignificant mention, because no mention's been made, of state aid, workers' rights or environmental protections. I am concerned that the lack of attention given to these matters means that the government's idea of post-Brexit Britain is quite simply a race to the bottom. Whilst figuring out how to leave the EU is unquestionably complex, it appears that the Prime Minister has failed on her own terms. When in these negotiations was the Prime Minister being, and I quote, a bloody difficult woman? Because it's evident to me that the priority has always been surviving instead of striving, and this ignores many of the reasons people voted to leave the European Union. The Prime Minister and the government have had more than enough time to negotiate. And what have they brought my constituents? Chaos, a raft of cabinet resignations and a botched deal that many people who voted to leave do not feel takes back control. In fact, according to YouGov, only 20% of the British public actually support this half-baked deal. And it wouldn't surprise me if only 20% of the Prime Minister's own cabinet do as well. We need to have the best possible deal, but the Prime Minister is insisting that it is her deal or no deal, neither of which we accept. We cannot be in a position where it's either a calamity, hurriedly cobbled together, or nothing. That is not how this should work. This government needed to put forward a decent and appropriate plan so that members of this House could unify, instead of making the empty threat of no deal. Supporting a bad deal would be conceding to a political hoax designed to pressurise rather than persuade. This government has not even prepared for the possibility of no deal. As just one example, 11 of the 12 critical IT projects that are needed at the border in the event of no deal won't be completed in time for March 2019. And no deal Brexit would be catastrophic, and the government does not have the right to plunge our country into chaos because of its own failures. It would be politically unsustainable for this government to deliver a no-deal Brexit without the consent of Parliament. Our constituents were essentially asked a simple question: would you like a divorce, yes or no? They answered the question, but they did not have the detail. They did not know, in the terms of a divorce, who would have the children, who would get the house, or how the assets would be split. That is the detail that we have been discussing in this place. It is becoming increasingly clear that this deal is a damning indictment of the government failure to negotiate a deal that will help us prosper post-Brexit. My constituents have voted to leave the EU. So if we're going to launch into this vast open space, we must have a parachute. We must ensure we are prepared for a safe landing. As we leave the EU, we must tackle the burning injustice of poverty and make Britain a country that works for everyone. So I am struggling to see how what appears to be a chaotic attempt at scrambling support for an agreement to a deal can be a catalyst for genuine progressive change for this country and for my constituents. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr.